code. Okay, so just looking at the Revit elements in general, just cover some of these things quickly. We've actually used quite a few of these already, but it's worth just getting an overview of all the different kinds before you go too far with the program. So this doesn't cover everything, but it covers almost everything. Especially, it covers the really critical parts of the program anyway. Datum, we've touched on levels, grids, and reference planes. They're not all essential. Levels are the only essential one, but grids and reference planes are useful, and I'll give you more examples of those later, but we're going to look at levels right away. And then probably the thing you'd be making the most of host elements, walls, floors, roofs, and ceilings. I put floors in there twice, I know. But we've made a couple walls, and you might have made some floors or some roofs already. We're going to spend most of the time over the next week or so looking at those things, but also starting to look at component elements, which are in general things hosted by those bigger elements, but can also cover things that hosts themselves, and that's where it can get a little bit confusing, because stairs can host railings, and so can ramps, but they're still thought of as component elements. The other elements there are more obvious component elements, things like doors, windows, furniture, fittings. They're all hosted by things like walls and floors. So when you move a wall that has a door in it, the door goes with it. If you move a floor that has some furniture on it, the furniture goes with the floor, things like that. And so the way things go together, it's important, and once you understand that, it makes it easier to make those things and understand why, when you make certain changes, certain things are going to happen. The last one there, in-place elements, or in-place component elements or families, they're one of the most useful things in the program, but also maybe one that is difficult to understand until you've really used the program. Maybe at first it's easiest just to think of them as custom elements, and it adds a lot of flexibility to the program. It means you can basically do anything. If the basic tools don't let you, particularly with host elements, the tools are limited deliberately. In place families basically will let you do anything. So those are your building elements, the things that represent, real things you're going to build. Then you have your annotation and detail elements, and I know detail elements represent things you're going to build, but they're often thought of differently because they're typically not 3D. They're basically 2D overlays on top of your 3D elements, and really useful because Revit is a great detailing program. That's one of the things that has, when they're marketing the program, they always say that that's one of the advantages of Revit over programs like ArchiCAD. And annotation is set up in a similar way, so that it's basically done as a 2D overlay, even though there is 3D text as well. Most annotation you'll do is 2D, and so that's dealt with differently to your building elements. And then site elements, look, really once you understand the main elements, you'll see site elements are just specialised tools that you have for external things on your properties, for the topography in general, and then things like parking components and trees. So with all of those tools, that does cover all the things you need on architectural drawings, and can give you a lot of other things as well. And of course my previews just come up to get in the way. Let's get rid of that. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I've got this basic Revit structure diagram which shows you how all of these things fit together. And so you can see on the left we've got the model elements, which are those building elements I was talking about, and really that's probably what you'd want to focus on at first, so you know how to make all of the parts of the buildings that you need to, but also understanding how you can then control those things. Data elements are important, particularly levels, and then the view-specific elements, being the details and text, and also dimensions, I should have mentioned before. They're really something you'll do after making those other things. But it's important to know, even at the beginning, about those things so you know how you're going to get to the finished detail or whatever that you need in the end. So just going to the next slide there. You can see there I've got those elements listed again, and so I'm just going to start with levels with these datum elements. I'll show you once you've had a bit of a look at those that grids and reference planes do something similar, but like I said, they're not essential, unlike levels. Grids particularly work a lot like levels. So I'm just going to switch to Revit there. And so I've got a few things open now. There we are, and skipping past. There it is. Okay, so I'll close the files that I have open. So you asked me before about having multiple files open. Just like AutoCAD, when you go to the main menu, if you choose close, it doesn't close the whole program, it just closes the open file. If you want to exit the program, you can choose exit Revit on the menu there. And so I've got now only my project file open. So I'm going to make some levels. You can do this at any stage. You can do it after you've made a few objects or before, and I usually like to do it right at the beginning. I'll come back and put those walls in again that you've already got in a moment. But for now I'm just going to switch to one of the side views. So you can only make levels in an elevation or a section view. You can't make them in a plan or a 3D view. And that makes sense really, because you can only see them in those side views. So believe it or not, levels are the only essential thing in a project. You can delete all the levels from a project, but if you then try and make a wall, it'll give you an error because there are no levels to host your wall. So levels are the base host object of everything in a project. So you need at least one level. You can see there in the south elevation, I've got two levels already, and I'm going to zoom in and you can see we've got the heights on those. Ground floor being at 0 and level 1 4,000. Now if I select a level, you can see then that these extra controls come up. So I'm going to start, after I've selected it, by clicking onto the RL or the height, and or the level I should say, and I can change that to a different height. So I think it was 3,000. Oh no, yeah, 3,000 is it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the next one's 54. So so it will move accordingly. And then when you change the name, so this one's O2 FL level 2. You should get a message asking if you want to rename corresponding views. Now, my full-time students, who I have to give assignments to, I mark them down if they say no when they're asked this question. If they ever say no, I actually take marks off them because I don't think you should ever say. I don't think it's a reason to say no. Really, I know why they give you the option, but by saying yes, what you're doing is not only renaming the corresponding plans over here in the project browser. You can see two plans names have changed: the floor plans and the ceiling plans, or sorry, a floor plan and a ceiling plan. So they're the corresponding views in this case, and so it renames those for you. If you say no, not only does it not rename them, it removes the link. So if you want a plan that is linked to the name of your level, you've got to go and make a new one, and that can be fiddly. So I think it's always good to leave at least one plan associated with each level name that you have, and you can have copies. If you want a plan that has a different name to the level, that's fine. You can just make a copy of it and give it whatever name you like. so it can have a different name on the sheet, for example. But it's hard to keep track of the levels that you're drawing in if you don't have one that's at least with has the same name as the level that it's associated with. And I'll just show you a bit more about that. If I select that floor plan in the project browser, you'll see going down the list here on the right. I've got my properties on the right. Hopefully you can all see that. There's an associated level. That floor plan has the associated level, FL level 2, and you can't change that. So even if I had a different name, if I called it level 1, it wouldn't matter. It would still be associated with that level, no matter what. So I'll show you a bit more about duplicating views, hopefully later on tonight, so you can have floor plans that don't have the same name as your level. But I think the way not to do it is by saying no. Always say yes, I think. It really just makes management much easier. So I've got those two levels there, and now...
So who is that in properties?
Oh, you need to select one of the floor plans over in the project browser, and then it should say floor plan at the top, and so if you scroll down then you'll see at the bottom. And that's one of the common misunderstandings with Revit when you first start working with floor plans, mixing them up with levels, because they are different. Level plans can be associated with levels, but you can actually have levels without plans. So they're not the same thing, but like I said, it's good to have them associated, and then if you need to, make copies of the plans if you want different names, and that's something that you will, I'm sure you'll want different names. So I'm going to make another level, and this is probably the main set of pointers I can give you. A lot of that stuff I know won't mean a lot until you've actually started producing lots of floor plans. But what I'm going to do now is make a level, and so by clicking on the level button on the Home tab, that'll begin that. Okay, and what I found, if you draw the level with the, well, in this case, left to right. So I'm starting on the left-hand side, and notice how I'm just moving the mouse until I get the extension line, and that's going to line it up with the levels below. Now I know it's meant to be 2400 above, but I'm just going to draw it anywhere for now. In terms of the height, I'm not going to be too precise there, but I'm going to make sure I get that extension line. Hopefully that's coming up there. Yep. And then, yep, so you'll see just when you move the mouse above the ends of those other levels, it should give you an extension line. And then over on the right hand side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to wait till I get the extension line. And you might think, well, that's pretty good. In a way, it lines things up. And that's basically what it does do, but it does it in multiple views, not just this view. And that's what you've always got to be thinking about in programs like Revit. You're working in 3D all the time, whether you like it or not. And so by lining it up here, it's lined up in all the other side views. If I don't line it up at the beginning, I've then got to go and tidy it up in the other views sometimes. So that's just a pointer I can give you. It does help if you line things up when you first make them. Just to maybe make that a bit clearer. Say if I'd drawn it like this, just with one of the ends not lined up. That means also here it's not lined up, and it can actually even cause problems in other views like the east elevation, because that level's visible in all of those views. So it really does help if you line it up at the beginning. You can fix it afterwards, but it's sometimes more work than just lining it up in the first place. So the way you can tell that it is lined up is you get that little lock symbol on the end coming out from the extension line, and that means the ends of the levels are all going to go together. Using the open circle there, you can just move those wherever you like. You can turn the tag on either end. So I'm going to turn that on this end as well, just using that tick box at the end, and I can turn it off over here to have the tag on the other side. But this is where it gets a little bit confusing. If I look in the north elevation now, you'll see the tag is on the end that I had by drawing it. It puts the tag on the second point. So when you draw a level, that's why I always say generally left to right, if your tags are already on the right, because then it puts the tag on that side. And it does it for all of your views. It lines them up. If I go right to left, the tag goes on the wrong end. And if I fix it here, okay, it's right in this elevation. But if I go now to the south elevation, you can see it's still on the other end. So just those little things can hopefully, you don't have to go through the pain I did when I had to fix up a 6-story building with about 15 levels in it across about 12 different elevations and sections. So there we go. So that's all right now. And so the other thing I do when I'm first starting the project is just go through the elevations just to get an idea how the views are set up, section as well. So you can see there in the section view, I can see all the levels, but I might be in trouble when I start putting the roof in because it's going to go up above this region. But I'll fix that when it happens. For now, at least I can see all the levels. And in any side view where you can see the levels, you can change things like the height. So 5400 is the height there.
So that figure works up to 0.
It does, yeah. And so now your datum in terms of a survey can be anywhere. There are tools in Revit for managing survey points and establishing either a relative or an absolute way of measuring your heights. But what I found is that if you just use this as AHD, so you set your ground floor to whatever AHD height you've got in millimeters, and then just do the other levels from there. Works really well. No, not at all. No. It can handle negative heights, but if you don't want negative heights, obviously you can just use AHD, and then you probably never end up with negative unless you're building in what's that one in town where they're going to be going under below sea level. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Be curious to see how that turns out. So there you made data anyway. So I'll just quickly go back to that slide. Show tab and just show you one last thing with datum. This isn't in the tutorial, but I think once you can do levels, you'll be able to easily do this. And God, I've gone past it. So many programs open as usual. All right, so I pointed out the main things there. Establish heights. You need at least one. They can only be selected in or created inside views. And I should have said selected inside views as well. Grids, you don't need, but they are really useful, especially for columns. And once you can work with levels, you can work with grids. They work almost the same way. So I'll give you a couple of quick little examples with those. And reference planes we've already used. You can use them in either side views or plan views. And they are really, really useful. That's why we always start with those. A lot of people don't. A lot of people just get in and start drawing walls and things, and that's fine. But you'll find once you're doing anything that's a little bit complicated, if you don't know how to use reference planes, it can be difficult, or in fact, for a lot of things, it's impossible to do some operations without reference planes. So I'll just quickly show you. On the Home tab, you've got grids which are in datum, just like levels are, or just like the level for this. And then just like a level, it puts the tag on the second point that you click. Unlike a level, you can make it at any angle. And you can draw them in side views. You can draw them in elevations and sections as well, but not 3D views. So you can see there, I've got a tag on the end. I've got a lot of the same controls as I do with a level. Now I'll go through some of these other controls that I've missed that you would have seen on the level as well. Things like the little break line and the 3D symbol and the way that the grips work. But just to quickly show you some things with those tags, at the moment that's 1, and just like a level, I can click on that to change it. But I'm actually happy with that at the moment. So I'll put in some more grid lines just quickly, and I'm actually going to use these in place of reference planes for the building now. Was it 4 meters by, or 7 by 12, isn't it? They're building up. Look at it in a second, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So, okay, so I've got just a couple of grid lines. Just like levels, you get those things like, the extension lines.
Did you want the tag by
Oh no, with the same thing, the extension line. But you can, after you've made it, you can just drag the ends to line it up the same way as you do when you draw them. So I might do that. I'll just draw one going to the left here, and it's coming up as grid 3. But I'm going to change that to A, and then you'll see the next one automatically will come up as B. And when I've got it lined up with A, it's going to show me the extension line. But if I don't get it, if I put it to one side, that's fine. I can always either adjust it now or later on, come back and select it, and then once it's dragged so that I get the extension line, then it'll just lock it just the same as with a level. Make it 12,000 as well. And so they do work a lot like vertical levels. Reference planes aren't on the datum tab, but they really do work in a similar way. In fact, when you give them a name, they do work almost the same as grids. The big difference being that you can use them in any kind of file. You can't use grids in families, so that's why reference planes are maybe used a little bit more. But and also grids don't print. Sorry, grids do print, and reference planes don't print. So they're perfect for construction lines that you don't want to see.
Are these reference planes totally accurate? I mean, you sort of.
Oh yeah.
You're doing them by eye, and so it's relying on the showing that it's 90 degrees.
Yeah, the angle is 100% accurate. Yeah, the length of them is never accurate. Well, you can measure it, but the length is really important because it's just a graphical symbol. But the distance between them is always 100% accurate. So, yep, no, they are totally accurate. They set the location for everything else, so yeah, they've got to be spot on. The only limitation with reference planes is that they can't be curved, but grid lines can. So you can see when you're drawing a grid line, you've actually got the option to draw with an arc segment instead of a line segment on the last panel there. So you can, if you need to, have curved grid lines. Can't do that with reference planes, unfortunately.
So where is that option?
Just when you're drawing the grid, once you've clicked on the grid tool, it's right at the end of the ribbon. So you've got those different shapes. So they're all your tabs. I'll just stop that recording, and then I'll come back and show you some other things.